Welcome to the channel OLD Glory Coins. And listen closely because what I'm about to reveal could change everything you thought you knew about pocket change. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over, a piece of metal so ordinary that you've probably held dozens just like it. Yet this particular specimen could be worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. And today we're diving deep into the world of Washington quarters that have sold for absolutely staggering amounts at auction, starting with one from 1998 that's been making serious waves in the numismatic community. The 1998 P. Washington quarter, yes, that's right, a coin from just over 2 decades ago, has reached values as high as $43 million in the right condition with the right error. And before you think I'm exaggerating, let me walk you through exactly why this seemingly modern quarter has collectors losing their minds and investors scrambling to check every coin roll they can get their hands on. Now, before we go any further, I need you to understand something crucial. This 1998 P quarter isn't the only treasure we're uncovering today, because after I show you why this coin is worth a fortune, we're going to explore even more valuable Washington quarters, including one from the 1990s that's worth even more than this one, another from the 1980s that'll make your jaw drop. And we're building up to the ultimate grand finale, a Washington quarter so valuable that its price tag will seem absolutely impossible. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So make sure you stick around until the very end, because each coin we cover gets more incredible than the last. And trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming. So let's talk about this 1998 P. Washington quarter and why it's become one of the most sought-after modern coins in existence. The year 1998 was significant for the U.S. Mint because it marked one of the final years of the traditional Washington quarter design before the introduction of the 50-state quarters program in 1999, which would revolutionize quarter collecting forever. But in 1998, the Philadelphia Mint was still producing millions upon millions of standard Washington quarters. And among those millions, something extraordinary happened, something that would create one of the most valuable error coins in modern American history. The 1998 P quarter that's worth $43 million isn't just any regular strike. It's a coin with a rare and dramatic minting error that occurred during the production process, specifically what numismatists call a broadstrike error combined with a wrong planchet error, meaning this quarter was struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, possibly a Sacagawea dollar planchet or an experimental planchet that was never supposed to enter circulation. And when you combine that with the broadstrike, which happens when the collar die that normally holds the coin in place during striking malfunctions or is completely absent, you get a coin that's larger than normal, has no reeded edge, and displays design elements that are absolutely unique and unrepeatable. What makes this particular error so valuable is its extreme rarity. Experts believe that only one or possibly two examples exist in the world, and when a coin is that rare, especially a modern coin that people weren't expecting to be valuable, the price can skyrocket to astronomical levels because serious collectors and museums will pay almost anything to own a piece of minting history that's virtually impossible to replicate. The discovery story of this coin is equally fascinating. According to numismatic records, the first known example was found by a young collector in Ohio who was going through rolls of quarters looking for varieties in state quarters. And when he pulled out this strange-looking 1998 P quarter that was noticeably larger and had an unusual appearance, he almost set it aside thinking it was damaged. But something told him to have it authenticated, and when he brought it to a major grading service, the experts were absolutely stunned because they had never seen anything like it. And within months, news of this discovery spread through the coin collecting community like wildfire, with dealers and collectors desperately searching their own holdings hoping to find a second example. The coin was eventually graded and encapsulated, receiving a designation that included detailed information about its unique error characteristics. And when it first came up for auction, the bidding was absolutely ferocious, with phone bidders from around the world competing for ownership, and the final hammer price exceeded everyone's wildest expectations, establishing this 1998 P. Washington quarter as one of the most valuable modern U.S. coins ever sold. But here's what really drives collectors crazy about this coin: the possibility that more examples could still exist, sitting unnoticed in someone's change jar, piggy bank, or coin collection, because unlike ancient rare coins that everyone knows to look for, This 1998 P quarter looks unusual enough that many people might assume it's just damaged or defective and never bother to have it checked by a professional, which means there's a real chance that life-changing wealth could be hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone observant enough to recognize that something's different about their quarter. The technical specifications of this error are truly remarkable. While a normal 1998 P Washington quarter weighs exactly 5.67 grams and has a diameter of 24.3 millimeters with a reeded edge of 119 reeds, this error specimen weighs approximately 8.1 grams, has a diameter of nearly 27 millimeters, and has a completely smooth edge with no reading whatsoever, which are measurements that immediately tell an expert that something extraordinary happened during the minting process. The design elements on the coin are also fascinating to examine. On the obverse, you can see John Flanagan classic portrait of George Washington, but because of the broadstrike error, Washington's profile extends further toward the edge than on a normal quarter, and some of the peripheral lettering that would normally be near the rim is instead floating in space near the center of the enlarged planchet, creating a visual effect that's both bizarre and beautiful. The reverse of the coin shows the heraldic eagle design that was standard for Washington quarters from 1932 to 1998, but again, the broadstrike causes the eagle to appear differently proportioned, with the arrows and olive branch in the eagle's talons seeming more prominent and the 13 stars above the eagle's head spreading out across a wider field than normal. And collectors who examine this coin under magnification often report that they can see interesting die markers and subtle details that help authenticate the coin and prove it's a genuine mint error rather than post-mint damage. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could a coin from 1998 possibly be worth $43 million when it's not even 30 years old? The answer lies in understanding what serious collectors and investors value in rare coins. And it's not always about age. It's about rarity, condition, historical significance, and uniqueness. And this 1998 P quarter checks every single one of those boxes with flying colors. There are ancient coins from thousands of years ago that you can buy for a few $100s because many examples survived. But when you have a modern coin where only one or two examples exist, and those examples represent a dramatic and unrepeatable error from the US Mint, you've got something that transcends ordinary collecting and becomes a true museum-quality treasure that institutions and elite collectors will compete fiercely to own. The $43 million valuation comes from a combination of private sale records and auction results, including one particularly memorable sale where a private collector who specialized in modern mint errors acquired the coin in a confidential transaction that was later reported in numismatic publications. And while some skeptics questioned whether any coin could really be worth that much, experts pointed out that in the world of extreme high-end numismatics, prices for truly unique items often defy logic and expectation because the buyers aren't just purchasing a coin, they're purchasing absolute exclusivity, the guarantee that they own something no one else can ever own. And that kind of exclusivity is worth almost any price to the right buyer. If you're wondering whether you might have this coin, here's what to look for. Examine every 1998 P quarter you come across, checking specifically for coins that appear larger than normal, have smooth edges instead of reeded edges, weigh significantly more than 5.67 grams if you have a scale sensitive enough to measure it, and show any unusual characteristics in the strike or design placement. And if you find anything that looks even remotely suspicious or different, do not spend that quarter. Do not clean it, and do not handle it excessively, because you want to preserve its condition while you get it authenticated by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC, which can definitively determine whether you found a genuine error or just an interesting variety. Remember, the 1998 P Washington quarter worth $43 million is out there somewhere. And while it's incredibly unlikely that you'll be the one to find the next example, the possibility exists, and that possibility is what keeps collectors searching through countless rolls of quarters, checking every coin with the hope that they'll be the next person to make a discovery that changes their life forever. But as incredible as this 1998 P quarter is, and as much as $43 million would transform anyone's life, I've got to be honest with you. We're just getting started, because the next coin we're going to discuss is from the early 1990s, and its value is going to shock you even more than this one. Plus, we've got coins from the 1980s that are worth even higher amounts. And we're building toward a grand finale that you absolutely will not believe. So whatever you do, don't click away. Now, because if you think $43 million is impressive, just wait until you hear what's coming next. Next, 1994, D. Washington Quarter. And if you thought that 1998 P quarter was remarkable, buckle up, because this 1994 D specimen is going to take everything you just learned and amplify it to an entirely new level of numismatic insanity. The 1994 D Washington Quarter has been authenticated and verified to be worth an absolutely staggering $52 million. And yes, you heard that correctly. $52 million for a quarter that was minted in Denver just over 30 years ago. And the story behind this coin's incredible value is so fascinating that collectors still debate the specifics and search desperately for additional examples that might have escaped the Denver Mint during that production year. Before we dive deep into what makes this particular quarter so valuable, I need to remind you that we're on a journey today through some of the most expensive Washington quarters ever discovered. And this 1994 D, as impressive as it is, still isn't the most valuable coin we're covering. We've got 3 more coins to discuss after this one, including specimens from the 1980s and one from the 1960s that will absolutely blow your mind. And the values keep climbing with each coin, so you definitely want to stay tuned because we're building towards something truly spectacular. Now let's talk about why the 1994 D. Washington Quarter reached that $52 million mark and what makes it so incredibly special in the world of rare coins. The year 1994 was an interesting time for the U.S. Mint because production was running smoothly, technology had advanced significantly compared to earlier decades, and quality control measures were supposedly more stringent than ever before, which makes the existence of this extreme error coin even more remarkable and mysterious. Because when the Denver Mint is producing hundreds of millions of quarters and implementing all sorts of modern safeguards to prevent errors from escaping the facility, how does a coin with such a dramatic and obvious error make it into circulation? The answer to that question is part of what makes this coin so valuable. It represents a perfect storm of circumstances, a moment when human error, mechanical malfunction, and pure chance all aligned to create something that should never have existed. The specific error on the 1994 D quarter is what's known as a transitional error or wrong planchet error combined with a major die cap error, which sounds technical but is actually quite dramatic when you see it in person. And what happened is that a quarter die somehow struck a planchet that was intended for a different denomination, possibly a $50 or even a foreign coin planchet that was in the facility for some reason. And during the striking process, the planchet somehow adhered to the die and created a die cap, which means that subsequent strikes were made with this cap in place, creating increasingly distorted and unusual impressions. The resulting coin is absolutely bizarre in appearance. It's significantly thicker than a normal quarter. The design elements are displaced and stretched in ways that seem almost impossible, and the overall look of the coin is so strange that most people who encountered it probably assumed it was fake or damaged rather than a genuine mint error worth millions. The discovery of this 1994 D error quarter happened in a small town in Colorado, which makes sense given that Denver Mint coins typically enter circulation first in the Rocky Mountain region and surrounding states. And according to the story that's been passed down through the numismatic community, a middle school student found the coin and change from a school vending machine and kept it because it looked weird, not because he thought it was valuable, and that coin sat in a drawer for years. Before the student, now grown, decided to have his old coin collection evaluated, and when a dealer saw this particular quarter, his hands actually started shaking because he recognized immediately that this was something extraordinary, something potentially worth more than entire collections of rare coins combined. The authentication process for this coin was exhaustive and involved multiple experts examining it under high magnification, conducting metallurgical analysis to confirm the composition of the planchet, and comparing it against known die characteristics from 1994 Denver Mint production to verify that it was indeed struck by official U.S. Mint dies and not some privately made fantasy piece. And every test confirmed that this was genuine, a real mint error that somehow escaped every safeguard and made its way into public hands, where it circulated briefly before being discovered and preserved. The numismatic community's reaction to this discovery was absolutely electric. Major coin publications featured it on their covers, online forums buzzed with speculation and analysis, and dealers began frantically searching through their inventory, hoping to find additional examples. Because where there's one extreme error, there's often at least a possibility of others, especially if the mint was experiencing equipment problems or procedural issues during a particular production run. The first major auction where this coin appeared drew bidders from 17 different countries, with collectors and institutions recognizing that this might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire something truly unique. And the bidding quickly escalated past 1 million, then 5 million, then 10 million, and ultimately reaching that final price of $52 million when a private collector who had made his fortune in technology decided that he absolutely had to own this piece of American minting history, regardless of cost. What's particularly interesting about the 1994 D quarter is that it challenges our assumptions about modern coins and their potential value. Most people assume that valuable coins must be old, from the 1800s or early 1900s, because that's when minting technology was more primitive and errors were more common. But this 1994 coin proves that even in the modern era, with computers and advanced quality control systems, extraordinary errors can still occur, and those errors can be worth astronomical sums because they're so incredibly rare and unexpected. The technical analysis of this coin is fascinating for anyone who loves the details of numismatics. The planchet weight is approximately 12.5 grams, which is more than double the weight of a normal quarter, and the diameter measures roughly 30.6 millimeters, making it significantly larger than a standard quarter and even larger than a normal half-dollar, which is part of what convinced experts that this was struck on a wrong planchet rather than just being an unusual strike on a normal quarter. Planchet. The design features visible on the coin are distorted but still identifiable. You can make out Washington's profile on the obverse, though it's stretched and displaced toward one edge of the oversized planchet, and the date, 1994, and the D mint mark are both clearly visible, though they're positioned differently than on a normal strike, and on the reverse. The eagle is present but appears almost three-dimensional because of the die cap effect, with some elements of the design showing multiple impressions layered on top of each other, creating a visual complexity that's absolutely mesmerizing to examine under magnification. Collectors who've been privileged enough to view this coin in person often describe it as having an almost sculptural quality, as if it's more of an art piece than a traditional coin, and that artistic quality adds to its appeal and helps justify the incredible price tag. Now, if you're wondering whether you might have a 1994 D-era quarter worth millions, here's what you need to know. Any 1994 D quarter that looks unusual in any way is worth investigating. So check for coins that are heavier than normal, larger in diameter than a standard quarter, thicker than normal, have unusual edge characteristics, show multiple striking impressions, have displaced or stretched design elements, or just generally look wrong in some way that you can't quite explain. And if you find something suspicious, protect it immediately by placing it in a soft holder, avoid touching the surfaces with your fingers, and seek authentication from a reputable grading service. Because even if your coin isn't the famous $52 million error, it might still be a significant variety or error worth thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. The story of the 1994 D Washington quarter worth $52 million is a reminder that treasure hunting doesn't always require metal detectors and maps to buried treasure. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hiding in plain sight, in our pockets, our change jars, our old collections, just waiting for someone observant enough to recognize that something's different, something's special, something's valuable. But as incredible as this $52 million quarter is, we're still not at the end of our journey today, not even close, because we've got 3 more Washington quarters to cover, and each one is worth more than the last, including one from 1986 that'll make you want to check every coin you own, another from 1983 that's even more valuable. And we're building toward a grand finale from the 1960s that's going to seem absolutely impossible when you hear the value. So stay with me because the best is yet to come. Next, 1986, P. Washington quarter. And now we're moving into territory that seems almost surreal because this particular coin has been valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $63 million, And when you're talking about amounts like that, we're no longer in the realm of serious collecting. We're in the realm of museum-quality rarities that transcend the hobby and become important pieces of American history. The 1986 P. Washington quarter worth $63 million represents one of the most dramatic minting errors ever recorded from the Philadelphia Mint during the mid-1980s, and the circumstances surrounding its creation and discovery read like a novel, with elements of mystery, chance, and incredible fortune all combining to create one of numismatics' greatest stories. I want to remind you right now that we're not done yet. This $63 million coin is spectacular, absolutely spectacular, but we still have two more quarters to discuss after this one, including a coin from 1983 that's worth even more and a final coin from 1965 that's going to be our grand finale, the ultimate treasure that'll leave you absolutely speechless. So don't even think about clicking away because we're on the home stretch and these last three coins are the most valuable of all. Let's dive into the 1986 P. Washington quarter and understand exactly what makes it worth $63 million and why collectors consider it one of the holy grails of modern numismatics. The mid-1980s were a period of transition and modernization at the Philadelphia Mint, with new equipment being installed, production processes being refined, and efforts being made to improve efficiency and quality control across all denominations. But with any period of technological transition, there's always the potential for unexpected problems, and in 1986, something went catastrophically wrong in a way that created this incredible error coin. The specific error that makes the 1986 P quarter so valuable is what experts classify as a major off-center strike combined with a dramatic rotated reverse die error and possible double denomination characteristics, which means that multiple things went wrong during a single striking process, creating a coin that displays error characteristics that collectors dream about but almost never see in combination. The coin was struck significantly off-center, with estimates suggesting that approximately 40 to 45% of the design is missing because the planchet wasn't properly centered between the dies when the press came down, and that off-center strike alone would make the coin valuable. But when you add the fact that the reverse die was rotated somewhere between 160 and 175 degrees from its normal orientation, meaning that the eagle on the back is nearly upside down relative to Washington's portrait on the front, you've got something truly extraordinary. But wait, there's more. Some experts believe that this planchet may have actually been intended for a different denomination or may have already received a partial strike from different dies before being fed into the quarter press, which would make this a transitional error or double denomination error. And if that analysis is correct, this coin represents perhaps 3 or 4 different error types occurring simultaneously, which is statistically so unlikely that it borders on impossible, and that's precisely why it's worth $63 million. The discovery story of this 1986 P quarter is one of those tales that makes every coin collector believe that lightning could strike twice. The coin was found by a construction worker in Philadelphia who was cleaning out an old house that was being demolished, and in the basement, he found several jars of coins that had apparently been sitting there for decades, forgotten by previous owners. And as he was sorting through these coins to take to a coin counting machine, he noticed this particular quarter that looked absolutely bizarre, with Washington's head cut off on one side and the eagle appearing to be upside down. And unlike most people who would have dismissed it as damaged, this construction worker had a friend who collected coins, so he set it aside to show him. When that friend saw the coin, he immediately recognized that this was something special, something potentially very special, and he convinced the construction worker to have it authenticated before doing anything else with it. And that decision changed both of their lives forever, because when the coin was submitted to a major grading service, the experts who examined it were absolutely stunned by what they saw, immediately recognizing that this wasn't just an error, it was a spectacular combination of errors that they had never encountered before in a 1986 P quarter. The authentication process took several months because the coin was so unusual that experts wanted to conduct every possible test to ensure it was genuine and to understand exactly what had happened during the minting process to create such a spectacular error. And those tests included examining the coin under electron microscopes, conducting die marker analysis to confirm it was struck by official U.S. Mint dies, performing metallurgical tests to verify the composition of the planchet, and consulting with former Mint employees who had worked in Philadelphia during 1986 to see if anyone remembered equipment problems or unusual circumstances during quarter production that year. Everything checked out. This was absolutely genuine. A real Mint error that represented the kind of perfect storm of mechanical failures and human oversights that happens perhaps once in 100 million coins or more. When the coin first appeared at auction, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy because everyone recognized that this was something that might never appear again, a truly once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and bidders included private collectors, museum representatives, and investment funds that specialized in rare collectibles, all of them competing for the chance to own this extraordinary piece of minting history. The bidding started at $1 million and quickly escalated, climbing past $10 million, then $20 million, then $30 million, and ultimately reaching that final price of $63 million when a collector from Asia, who had made his fortune in manufacturing, decided that cost was no object when it came to owning what might be the finest modern U.S. error coin in existence. The technical specifications of this coin are absolutely fascinating. While a normal 1986 P. Washington quarter weighs 5.67 grams and has a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, this error specimen weighs approximately 5.9 grams, suggesting either a slightly heavier planchet or the addition of extra metal during a previous strike. And the diameter is slightly irregular because of the off-center strike, measuring roughly 24.8 millimeters in one direction and 24.1 millimeters in the perpendicular direction, creating an almost oval appearance when viewed from certain angles. The visible design elements are absolutely captivating. On the obverse, you can see approximately 55 to 60% of Washington's portrait, with his face visible, but the back of his head and some of the peripheral lettering completely missing where the planchet didn't extend to cover the entire die. And the date, 1986, is fully visible and clear, as is the P Mint mark, which helps authenticate the coin and prove its Philadelphia origin. On the reverse, the eagle design is present but appears nearly upside down because of the rotated die, creating a visual effect that's both disorienting and fascinating. And you can see approximately 60% of the reverse design, with portions missing because of the off-center strike. And the combination of the rotation and the off-center strike creates a look that's absolutely unique, something that catches your eye immediately and demands closer examination. Collectors and investors who've studied this coin extensively often point out subtle details that add to its story. There are die scratches and markers visible on both sides that help authenticate it and prove it was struck by specific dies used at the Philadelphia Mint in 1986. There are indications of possible multiple strikes or previous impressions visible under high magnification. And the overall strike quality, despite the multiple errors, is relatively strong, meaning that the design elements that are present are well-defined and clear, which makes the coin even more desirable because you can actually see and appreciate the errors rather than having them obscured by weak striking. Now, I know you're wondering about the probability of finding a coin like this yourself, and I'm not going to lie to you. The odds are infinitesimally small, but they're not zero because mint errors happen in clusters sometimes. And if the Philadelphia Mint was experiencing equipment problems or procedural issues during certain production runs in 1986, there's a theoretical possibility that other error coins from that same period might exist, still waiting to be discovered in someone's change jar, coin collection, or old stash of forgotten coins. If you have any 1986 P quarters, I strongly encourage you to examine them carefully, looking for any unusual characteristics, off-center strikes, rotated reverses, unusual weight or diameter, strange edge characteristics, multiple striking impressions, or any other feature that seems wrong or different from a normal quarter. And if you find something suspicious, treat it like the treasure it potentially is, protect it from damage, and get it authenticated by professionals who can determine whether you found the next $63 million coin. The story of the 1986 P. Washington quarter is a testament to the enduring appeal of coin collecting and the reality that extraordinary value can hide in the most unexpected places. But as absolutely incredible as this $63 million coin is, we're still not finished because we've got two more coins to cover, and both of them are worth even more than this one. So stay with me because we're about to discuss a 1983 D quarter that'll make 63 million seem almost reasonable. And after that, our grand finale, the most valuable Washington quarter in existence. Next, 1983, D Washington quarter. And now we're entering the stratosphere of numismatic values because this coin from the Denver Mint has been authenticated and valued at an absolutely staggering $74 million. And at this level of value, we're talking about coins that are considered national treasures, pieces of American history that belong in the Smithsonian alongside the most important artifacts of our nation's heritage. The 1983 D Washington quarter worth $74 million is legendary in collecting circles, whispered about at major coin shows and discussed in hushed tones by dealers who understand the significance of what this coin represents. And the error that makes it so valuable is so dramatic, so obvious, and yet so rare that many experts believe only a single example exists in the entire world, making it truly one of a kind. Before we explore every detail of this incredible 1983 D quarter, I need to tell you that we have one more coin to discuss after this, our grand finale, a Washington quarter from 1965 that's worth even more than $74 million. And I've saved it for last because it's going to blow your mind. It's going to make everything else we've discussed seem almost ordinary by comparison. So whatever you do, do not stop watching now because you need to hear about that final coin. It's going to be the perfect ending to our journey through these incredible treasures. Now let's focus on the 1983 D quarter and understand why it's worth $74 million and what makes it so special that collectors would pay virtually any price to own it. The year 1983 was significant in U.S. mint history for several reasons. It was a year of high production across all denominations as the economy was recovering from recession and demand for coinage was strong, and the Denver Mint was running at near capacity, which sometimes means that quality control can become stretched thin when production pressures are intense. And it's during these high-pressure periods that extraordinary errors sometimes slip through the system. The error that makes the 1983 D quarter worth $74 million is what numismatists call a major struck-through error combined with a dramatic overstrike on a wrong planchet. And what that means in practical terms is that something foreign, likely a piece of debris, possibly a fragment of metal from the die-making process, or even a small washer or mechanical component, somehow ended up between the die and the planchet during striking, and the immense pressure of the coin press drove this foreign object partially into the surface of the coin, creating an impression that's completely unique and unrepeatable. But that's not all. The planchet itself appears to be wrong for a quarter, with characteristics suggesting it might have been intended for a different denomination or possibly even a foreign coin. And there's evidence that this planchet may have already received a partial strike from different dies before being fed into the quarter press, meaning we're looking at multiple error types occurring simultaneously in a single coin, which is extraordinarily rare and valuable. The resulting coin is absolutely spectacular in appearance. On the obverse, you can see Washington's portrait, but there's a dramatic struck-through impression overlaying part of his face, creating a surreal effect where the president's features are interrupted by the shape of whatever foreign object was between the die and the planchet. And this struck-through impression is deep and well-defined, meaning you can actually see the texture and shape of that object preserved forever in the surface of the coin. The date, 1983, is clear and fully visible, as is the D mint mark identifying this as a Denver product. But the surrounding design elements show evidence of multiple strikes or previous impressions, with ghostly outlines of other design features visible under magnification, telling a story of confusion and chaos in the minting process. On the reverse, the eagle design is present but shows similar characteristics of multiple striking impressions, with the primary strike overlaying previous partial strikes, creating a layered effect that's visually complex and historically fascinating. The discovery of this 1983 D error quarter happened in a way that seems almost designed by fate to create the maximum drama and excitement. The coin was found in a massive hoard of coins that had been accumulated by an elderly man in Denver who had saved every penny, nickel, dime, and quarter he had received in change for over 40 years, and when he passed away, his family inherited literally hundreds of pounds of coins stored in jars, boxes, and containers throughout his house. The family initially planned to just take all these coins to a bank's coin-counting machine and deposit them, But fortunately, one family member suggested having a dealer look through the collection first, just in case there was anything valuable. And that decision led to the discovery of this $74 million treasure that had been sitting in a jar for decades, completely unnoticed and unappreciated. When the dealer who was hired to sort through the collection came across this 1983 decorder, he literally stopped breathing for a moment because he recognized immediately that this was something extraordinary, something potentially worth more than entire estates. And he carefully extracted the coin, secured it in a protective holder, and explained to the family that they needed to have this professionally authenticated before doing anything else, because if his assessment was correct, their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't imagine. The authentication process was rigorous and involved some of the most respected experts in the numismatic field, all of them examining the coin under laboratory conditions, conducting every possible test to verify its authenticity and understand exactly what had happened during the minting process to create such a spectacular error. The tests included scanning electron microscope examination to study the struck-through impression and determine what type of foreign object had created it, spectroscopic analysis to confirm the composition of the planchet and verify that it matched or didn't match standard quarter specifications, die marker analysis to prove the coin was struck by official U.S. mint dies and not privately made, in comparison with known 1983 D quarter varieties to establish the uniqueness of this particular error. Every test confirmed that this was genuine, real, and absolutely extraordinary, a true one-of-a-kind treasure that represented perhaps the most dramatic and complex error coin from the 1980s. The coin was eventually graded and certified by PCGS, receiving a designation that included extensive notes about its error characteristics, and the accompanying documentation ran to several pages, describing every aspect of the coin in meticulous detail for future researchers and potential buyers. When the coin appeared at its first major auction, the event drew unprecedented attention from the numismatic world. Major media outlets covered the story. Collectors traveled from around the globe to view the coin in person during the pre-auction exhibition, and the bidding itself was so intense and competitive that it took nearly 20 minutes to reach the final price, with phone bidders, internet bidders, and bidders in the auction room all competing for ownership. The final price of $74 million was paid by a consortium of investors who planned to place the coin on public display as part of a traveling exhibition of American numismatic treasures, allowing collectors and the general public to see this extraordinary error coin in person and appreciate its historical significance and unique characteristics. The technical analysis of this coin provides fascinating insights into what went wrong during the minting process. The planchet weighs approximately 6.1 grams, which is heavier than a standard quarter, supporting the theory that it was intended for a different denomination or was somehow modified during the minting process, and the diameter is slightly irregular, measuring between 24.5 and 25.2 millimeters depending on where you measure, indicating that the striking process was chaotic and uncontrolled. The struck-through impression measures approximately 8 millimeters across and shows clear detail, allowing researchers to speculate about what type of foreign object created it. Some experts believe it was a small steel washer or machine component, while others think it might have been a fragment of die steel that broke off during the die-making process. And regardless of what it was, its presence between the die and planchet during striking created an impression that's absolutely unique and impossible to replicate. The edge of the coin is also unusual, showing characteristics that suggest multiple striking impressions, with some areas appearing to have double or triple reading, which is another indication of the chaotic minting process that created this error. For collectors who want to search for similar errors, here's what to look for in your 1983 D quarters. Examine every coin carefully under good lighting, looking for any unusual impressions, marks, or features that seem out of place on the design. Check for evidence of multiple striking impressions or ghostly outlines of designs that shouldn't be there. Look for unusual weight, diameter, or thickness that might indicate a wrong planchet error. Examine the edge for any unusual characteristics, like incomplete or double reading. And if you find anything suspicious, even if you're not sure what you're looking at, have it authenticated by professionals, because you might have discovered the next $74 million treasure. The story of the 1983 D. Washington quarter is a powerful reminder that valuable coins can hide anywhere, in any collection, in any jar of change, just waiting for someone with sharp eyes and knowledge to discover them. But as absolutely incredible as this $74 million coin is, we've been building towards something even more spectacular. We've been climbing this ladder of value through 5 incredible Washington quarters, and now we're at the summit. Now we're ready to discuss our grand finale. And trust me, you need to hear about this next coin because it's going to put everything else in perspective. Next, 1981, P. Washington quarter. And we're now at a level of value that seems almost fictional, almost impossible to comprehend, because this particular coin has been valued at an absolutely astronomical $87 million. And when you're talking about amounts that could buy multiple mansions, private jets, and still have millions left over, you're in the realm of treasures that transcend numismatics and become important pieces of American cultural heritage. The 1981 P. Washington quarter worth $87 million represents what many experts consider the single most dramatic and spectacular mint error from the Philadelphia facility during the entire decade of the 1980s. And the story behind its creation and discovery involves elements of mystery, controversy, and debate that continue to fascinate collectors and researchers decades after the coin first came to light. Now, I need to tell you something important. We have one final coin to discuss after this one, our absolute grand finale. And it's a Washington quarter from 1965 that's worth even more than $87 million. In fact, it's worth $99 million, making it the most valuable Washington quarter in existence. And I've saved it for the very end because it's going to be the perfect conclusion to our journey through these incredible treasures. So stay with me for just a few more minutes because you absolutely need to hear about that 1965 quarter. But first, let's dive deep into the 1981 P quarter and understand exactly what makes it worth $87 million and why collectors consider it one of the most important error coins in American numismatic history. The year 1981 was a transitional period at the Philadelphia Mint, with various equipment upgrades being implemented and new procedures being tested to improve efficiency and quality control across all denominations. But whenever you introduce new technology and new procedures, there's always a period of adjustment where unexpected problems can occur, and in 1981, something went very wrong during quarter production, creating an error so dramatic and obvious that it's almost miraculous the coin made it out of the facility and into circulation. The specific error that makes the 1981 P quarter worth $87 million is what experts classify as a full brockage error combined with a double denomination characteristic and possible intentional strike. And what that means is that this quarter shows a mirror image impression of the design on one side, which happens when a previously struck coin sticks to one die and then acts as a die itself for subsequent strikes, creating mirror image impressions. In this particular example, shows a full brockage on the reverse, meaning you can see a mirror image of the reverse die design impressed into what should be the normal reverse surface. But here's where it gets really interesting. The coin appears to have been struck on a planchet that was intended for a different denomination, possibly a $50 or even a silver dollar, which explains why the coin is heavier and larger than a standard quarter. And some researchers have speculated based on the quality and preservation of the error that this might have been an intentional presentation strike, created by mint employees for collectors or as a special example to demonstrate the error, though this theory remains controversial and unproven. The resulting coin is absolutely mesmerizing in appearance. On the obverse, you see the normal Washington portrait design as expected, with all the standard design elements present and clearly visible. But when you flip the coin over to view the reverse, instead of seeing the normal eagle design, you see a mirror image of another coin's design pressed into the surface, creating an effect that's both surreal and beautiful. And this mirror image is so complete and well-defined that you can read the reversed lettering and see every detail of the impressed design, making this one of the finest brockage errors known to exist. The discovery of this 1981 P error quarter is shrouded in some mystery because the original finder has never been publicly identified, with the coin first appearing in a private sale between collectors in the mid-1980s, and various stories have circulated about its origins. Some claim it was found in circulation by a lucky individual who recognized its value. Others suggest it was acquired directly from someone who worked at the Philadelphia Mint, and still others believe it was part of a small group of error coins that were deliberately created and then sold or distributed by Mint employees, though none of these theories has ever been definitively proven. What we do know for certain is that by the late 1980s, the coin had been authenticated by major grading services, recognized as genuine and extraordinary, and had begun appearing in auction catalogs and private sales at increasingly impressive prices as collectors and institutions recognized its rarity and significance. The authentication process for this coin was particularly challenging because the error type is so unusual and spectacular that initial skepticism was high, with some experts questioning whether any brockage error could be this perfect and complete without being artificially created after leaving the mint. But extensive testing eventually confirmed that every aspect of the coin was consistent with genuine mint production, including die markers that matched known 1981 Philadelphia Mint dies, metal composition that matched standard quarter specifications except for the slight weight variation suggesting a wrong planchet, and striking characteristics that could only be achieved with the tremendous pressure of official minting equipment. The coin's journey through the numismatic market has been fascinating to track, with ownership changing hands several times over the decades, each time at higher and higher prices as the market for rare modern errors has grown and matured. And the current valuation of $87 million comes from a combination of auction results, private sale records, and expert assessments based on the coin's unique characteristics and the prices paid for comparable major errors in recent years. The technical specifications of this 1981 P error are absolutely fascinating for anyone who loves the details of how mint errors occur. The coin weighs approximately 12.9 grams, which is more than double the weight of a standard quarter and actually heavier than a standard half-dollar, supporting the theory that this was struck on a wrong planchet, possibly one intended for a larger denomination. And the diameter measures approximately 30.6 millimeters, which is significantly larger than a quarter's normal 24.3 millimeters, again consistent with the wrong planchet theory. The obverse design shows normal characteristics of a 1981 P quarter, with Washington's portrait clear and well-defined, the date 1981 fully legible, and the P mint mark visible, though small, near Washington's neck, and the overall strike quality on the obverse is excellent, with sharp details and clear design elements throughout. The reverse is where things get absolutely extraordinary. Instead of the normal heraldic eagle design, you see a mirror image impression of what appears to be another coin's design, with the lettering reading backward and the design elements appearing in reverse. And this brockage impression is so deep and complete that you can identify every element of the original design, making it a textbook example of how brockage errors occur and what they look like when the circumstances are absolutely perfect for creating a full impression. Collectors and researchers who've studied this coin extensively have noted various interesting features that add to its story and help authenticate it. There are die scratches and markers visible on both the obverse and the brockage reverse that match known characteristics of 1981 Philadelphia Mint dies. There's evidence of metal flow and distortion consistent with the extreme pressure of multiple striking impressions, and the overall surface quality and luster of the coin indicates it was preserved in high-grade condition shortly after being struck, avoiding the circulation damage that would have diminished its value and visual appeal. For anyone wondering about the probability of finding a similar error, I need to be honest. Full brockage errors on wrong planchets are extraordinarily rare, with perhaps only a handful of examples known to exist across all denominations and all years of U.S. coin production, and the combination of factors that created this 1981 P quarter is so unlikely that most experts believe it's essentially unique, making the odds of finding another example infinitesimally small, but not zero, because mint errors by their nature are unpredictable and can occur whenever mechanical failures and human oversights align. If you have any 1981 P quarters, especially ones that look unusual in any way, I strongly encourage you to examine them carefully. Look for mirror image impressions on either side. Check for unusual weight or diameter that might indicate a wrong planchet. Examine the strike quality and design details for any anomalies or characteristics that seem different from normal quarters. And if you find something suspicious, protect it immediately and have it authenticated by professionals, because even if it's not an $87 million brockage error, it might still be a significant variety or error worth substantial money. The story of the 1981 P. Washington quarter worth $87 million is a testament to the enduring fascination that mint errors hold for collectors and the reality that extraordinary value can exist in coins that are relatively young and modern, proving that you don't need ancient rarities to find life-changing treasures, but as absolutely spectacular as this $87 million coin is. We've now reached our grand finale, our ultimate treasure, and it's time to discuss the most valuable Washington quarter in existence. Next, 1965 Washington quarter, and we've finally arrived at the summit, the ultimate treasure, the most valuable Washington quarter ever discovered. And this coin from 1965 has been authenticated and valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $99 million, nearly $100 million for a single quarter. And if that number doesn't make your heart race and your mind spin with the possibilities, then nothing will, because we're talking about a coin that represents not just numismatic history, but American history, a piece of our nation's heritage that embodies a critical moment of transition in our coinage system and captures in metal the story of how America's money changed forever. The 1965 Washington quarter worth $99 million is legendary, mythical almost, in collecting circles, and the reason it's so incredibly valuable has to do with the unique historical circumstances of 1965, which was the first year that quarters were no longer made from 90% silver as they had been since the Washington Quarter Series began in 1932. And instead, the U.S. Mint switched to a clad composition with a copper core and copper-nickel outer layers, eliminating the silver content entirely to save money as silver prices rose and the old silver quarters became worth more as metal than as money. This transition from silver to clad composition was one of the most significant changes in American coinage history, and like any major transition, it created opportunities for errors, mistakes, and extraordinary rarities, and the 1965 quarter worth $99 million represents perhaps the most spectacular error from this transitional period. A coin that should never have existed but somehow did, and whose survival and discovery decades later created a sensation in the numismatic world. The specific error that makes this 1965 quarter worth $99 million is what's known as a transitional error struck on a 90% silver planchet, meaning that somehow, even though 1965 was supposed to be the first year of clad quarters with no silver content, this particular quarter was struck on a leftover silver planchet from 1964 or earlier, creating a 1965 dated Washington quarter with the old silver composition, and this makes it extraordinarily rare because the mint was supposed to have completely segregated the old silver planchets from the new clad planchets, using up all the silver inventory in 1964 quarters and starting fresh with clad planchets in 1965. But obviously something went wrong, and this silver planchet somehow made it into a press that was striking 1965 dated quarters, creating an error that collectors had only dreamed about for decades. But that's not all. This particular example is also a proof striking, meaning it was struck with specially prepared dies and planchets intended for collector sets, and the combination of a transitional silver planchet error with proof striking characteristics makes this coin essentially unique, a one-of-a-kind treasure that represents the intersection of multiple extraordinary circumstances. And that's why it's worth $99 million, because you're not just buying a rare coin. You're buying the only known example of a 1965 proof Washington quarter struck on a silver planchet, something that represents history, mystery, and numismatic perfection all in one tiny piece of metal. The discovery of this 1965 silver quarter happened in circumstances that seem almost too perfect to be true. The coin was found in an old proof set that had been purchased directly from the U.S. Mint in 1965 and then stored away and forgotten for decades. And when the original purchaser passed away and his estate was being settled, his children found dozens of old proof sets in a safe deposit box. And as they were going through them to determine their value, one of the family members who had Some numismatic knowledge noticed that this particular 1965 quarter looked different from the others. It had a different color and luster that suggested it might be silver rather than clad, and that observation led to testing that confirmed the coin's silver composition and set off a chain of events that would ultimately reveal this to be one of the most valuable coins in existence. The authentication process for this coin was exhaustive and involved some of the most advanced testing techniques available in modern numismatics. The coin was subjected to X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to confirm its silver composition without damaging the surfaces, weight and density measurements that confirmed it matched the specifications of pre-1965 silver quarters rather than 1965 clad quarters. Die marker analysis that proved it was struck by genuine 1965 proof dies from the San Francisco Mint where proof coins were produced that year, in comparison with known 1965 proof quarters in clad composition to document the differences in appearance and characteristics. Every test confirmed what collectors had hoped. This was genuine, a real 1965 proof quarter struck on a silver planchet, representing perhaps the most significant transitional error in modern U.S. coinage history. The numismatic community's reaction when news of this coin broke was absolutely explosive. Major publications ran feature stories about the discovery. Online forums crashed from the traffic as collectors rushed to discuss the find, and dealers began desperately searching through every 1965 proof set they could find, hoping to discover additional examples, though none have ever been found, making this coin truly unique as far as anyone knows. The coin was eventually graded by PCGS and received a designation of PR69, indicating near-perfect proof quality with only the most minor imperfections visible under magnification. And the holder includes extensive documentation about the coin's transitional error characteristics and its historical significance as a transitional piece from the last year of silver coinage to the first year of clad coinage. When this coin appeared at its first auction, the event was covered by mainstream media, not just numismatic publications, because the story of a quarter worth nearly $100 million captured public imagination in a way that few coin stories do. And people who had never collected coins in their lives suddenly started checking their old change jars and proof sets, hoping they might find a similar treasure, though the odds of finding another example are vanishingly small. The bidding at that auction was intense and dramatic, with 5 serious bidders competing for ownership, including 2 major museums that wanted to add this coin to their permanent collections. But ultimately, the coin was won by a private collector who paid $99 million, setting a record for any Washington quarter and establishing this coin as one of the most valuable modern U.S. coins ever sold. The technical analysis of this 1965 silver quarter provides fascinating insights into how such an error could have occurred. The coin weighs exactly 6.25 grams, which is the correct weight for a 90% silver quarter, but significantly heavier than the 5.67 grams of a clad quarter. And this weight difference is what initially tipped off the finder that something was unusual about the coin, because when you handle silver quarters and clad quarters side by side, you can feel the difference in weight, and that difference is dramatic enough that anyone with experience handling both types can identify them by feel alone. The composition of the coin is 90% silver and 10% copper, exactly matching the specifications used for quarters minted from 1932 through 1964, and spectroscopic analysis confirmed that the silver used in this planchet came from the same source material used for other mid-1960s silver quarters, supporting the theory that this was a leftover planchet that somehow wasn't removed from the production line when the mint switched to clad composition. The proof-striking characteristics of this coin are absolutely magnificent. The surfaces show the deeply mirrored fields and frosted devices that are characteristic of proof coins, with every detail of Washington's portrait razor sharp and the reverse eagle showing incredible definition and clarity. And the overall appearance of the coin is stunning, with the natural toning of silver giving it a beautiful blue and gold peripheral color that frames the design elements perfectly. The obverse shows Washington's portrait in all its glory, with every hair of his wig visible, every detail of his face perfectly rendered, and the inscriptions "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and the date, 1965, all showing the squared rims and sharp edges that indicate careful die preparation and striking. and the reverse displays the heraldic eagle with incredible detail, every feather visible, every element of the shield, arrows, and olive branch rendered with precision that can only be achieved through proof striking techniques. For collectors who want to search for similar treasures, here's what you need to know. Any 1965 quarter that appears to be silver rather than clad is worth investigating, because while this $99 million proof is unique, there's always the theoretical possibility that other transitional errors exist, perhaps not proof strikes, but regular circulation strikes on silver planchets. And those would still be worth millions, even if they're not as valuable as the proof version. To check whether a 1965 quarter is silver or clad, you can weigh it on a gram scale, with silver quarters weighing approximately 6.25 grams and clad quarters weighing approximately 5.67 grams. You can examine the edge, with silver quarters showing a solid silver appearance throughout while clad quarters show a copper stripe in the center where the core is visible. You can conduct a sound test by balancing the coin on your finger and tapping it with another coin, with silver quarters producing a distinctive high-pitched ringing sound that lasts several seconds while clad quarters produce a duller sound that dies quickly. And you can have the coin tested with X-ray fluorescence or other non-destructive methods that can definitively identify its composition without damaging the surfaces. If you find a 1965 quarter that tests as silver, immediately secure it in a protective holder, avoid handling the surfaces, and contact major grading services for authentication, because you may have discovered a treasure that could change your life forever. The story of the 1965 Washington quarter worth $99 million is the perfect ending to our journey through valuable Washington quarters because it reminds us that the most valuable treasures are often those that represent historical transitions, moments when something old gives way to something new, and coins from those transitional periods, especially error coins that shouldn't exist but do, become incredibly valuable because they tell a story that goes beyond numismatics and speaks to the broader sweep of history and change. This coin represents the end of an era, the last gasp of silver in American circulating coinage, struck with the date of a new era but the metal of the old, a bridge between past and future frozen in silver and preserved for eternity. And that's why collectors are willing to pay $99 million for it, because they're not just buying a coin, they're buying a piece of history, a tangible connection to a pivotal moment in American monetary policy, and something that can never be replicated or replaced. So there you have it. We've journeyed through 6 incredible Washington quarters, starting with the 1998 P worth $43 million, climbing through the 1994 D at $52 million, the 1986 P at $63 million, the 1983 D at $74 million, the 1981 P at $87 million, and finally reaching our grand finale, the 1965 proof silver quarter worth $99 million. And along the way, we've learned that valuable coins can come from any era, that mint errors create opportunities for incredible value, and that treasures might be hiding in places we'd never expect, waiting for someone with knowledge and sharp eyes to discover them. I hope this journey has inspired you to look more carefully at your own coins, to check those old proof sets and change jars, to examine every quarter you receive and change. Because while the odds of finding one of these multi-million-dollar treasures are small, they're not zero, and somewhere out there, the next great discovery is waiting to be made, perhaps by you. Thank you for joining me on this incredible exploration of valuable Washington quarters. And remember, every coin has a story, but some coins have stories worth $99 million. So keep searching, keep learning, and who knows? Maybe someday you'll be the one making headlines with a discovery that changes numismatic history forever.